So what I wanted to ask about how Diamonds or Jewels started in 1967. You were in the corps.
Not yet, not when it was created.
Okay.
I joined in 67, but it was at the end of 67, and Jewels was at the beginning of 67.
Okay, so you weren't in the very original.
No.
And you were, and Diamonds was the one that you guys both went into early on. And what did Balanchine speak about when he was making Diamonds?
Well, it was because Van Cleef and Alpel, which were very fancy jewelers, rivals to Tiffany, and they gave money to help underwrite a ballet that would be celebrating jewelry. And so he did Emeralds, which foray music, and he always described it as French countryside in the summer, right? Provence. And then Ruby's was jazzy, Stravinsky, and that was 42nd Street at midnight on New Year's Eve. Right? And then Diamonds was the court of Louis, of the Tsar.
Wow.
The Tsar, the court of the Tsar. That was the way he approached it. And
There were rumors, I used to hear rumors that there was a fourth one. He was thinking of Sapphire. Did you ever hear anything about that?
now that you mention it, I think, but it
didn't. Then he
never
was happy
came.
with his 3.
When Suzanne was here, she mentioned that the pas de deux he started working on the pas de deux from the passe développé, and then he added the walking in the beginning. Do you remember that he did it in pieces, or did he start and follow?
He may have done the pas de deux first and then the entrance later, and there was variations, and there was a middle section that
Of the pas de deux?
that it was longer, and he took it out. There was, I remember having variations in it, more than what you see now.
In the scherzo section?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's condensed from
Well,
what
he
it originally was?
At one point, he started adding the demis because the principals were working hard, and Jacques' calves were always vulnerable. And
I was tearing muscles all the time.
And so as a way to ease his, this is the way I interpreted it, understood it, was that as a way to make it easier for Jacques to add the demis, to give him a rest, to ensure that that he could still, would not get injured.
And how old were you when Diamonds was made about? Were you in your mid-career?
When was it? 67?
67.
I was born in 34, so whatever I was.
43 years old?
I guess so.
Is that right?
Pretty old.
So you were with a much younger ballerina.
Yes.
And what was the feeling as he was creating the work that you felt in the chemistry of the partnership between you and Suzanne? What kind of adjectives did you feel were developing in your imagination when it was being made?
I don't remember anything like that.
Just dance.
Just do the steps.
Just do the steps.
And lift the ballerina and put her down lovelyly and lightly and right.
And let the essence just reveal itself. You didn't have to think about it. It just.
I always thought the best part of it was Ruby's, anyway. And I loved that Eddie Valola was so good with Patty McBride. Weren't they a wonderful?
They were fabulous,
God,
yeah.
Right, it's so terrific. But it was very funny because Eddie would be in the wings. Legs, speak to me. And Patty's with him, doing the
While
same
you're
steps.
warming up for
She wasn't
Diamonds.
even puffing. She
Wow.
was just, but he did everything full out. And Eddie.
I remember when Suzanne was coaching at New York City Ballet a few weeks ago, and the man in his scherzo variation went and did a push, and she's like, no, that's Ruby's. Diamonds is that. Don't push to take off, because that's another quality that's not this ballet. So the distinctive qualities of those different pieces seems like Diamonds has a certain elegance, nobility,
Yes,
and
because
length
it was
to it.
inspired by the court of the Tsar. Balanchine always described it. This is the court of the Tsar.
And
before
Petipa.
the communists came.
What makes this Tchaikovsky ballet different from, say, Tchaikovsky Suite No. 3 or Theme and Variations in your minds? What makes this one stand apart? I know they're all very different, but what would you consider made this one?
For me, I think this pas de deux is very much about a woman who is elusive and who is, on one hand, she has her manners and she will be with the man, but that she's maybe going to run away. She's indecisive about what her own mind is. Does she love him? Does she not love him? Does she want to love him? What's the situation? And that she's constantly, so it's love and the elusiveness of love. Theme and Variations to me isn't, I don't find that kind of story in it. It's much more pure
music and technique.
Yeah.
It feels like there's ways of approaching Diamonds, many ways of approaching Diamonds, and there's the pure technique and the very noble way, and then there's the more almost improvisatory, just connecting way. Do you think it's sort of finding that balance of not being stiff and correct, but yet also being clear?
Now, did Suzanne help you in learning it?
She just came back to New York City Ballet and worked for 3 days with the principals.
Oh, well, that's great.
And so there was very much a quality when they entered. She didn't want walking, she wanted it just as if you're just coming together. So it was a very different take than what I had learned and what we had been doing. So it was finding the balance of making it not overly precise and correct, but also making it somewhat alive with the partner and very much connecting with the partner, very much looking between the man and the woman. And she had a lot of those ideas, and I imagine that there's just multiple ways to look at this ballet.
Yeah, I think there are, and I think there are, you can also see, subtext of her life in it with Balanchine. And it was interesting when I was first staging Diamonds in Russia for the Bolshoi, I happened to be reading the biography of Catherine the Great. And I saw all sorts of connections there because she had this husband who was, not, somewhat unsound of mind, and yet she loved men. She had a lot of lovers in secret, but she had to keep it quiet. She had to present herself like she was the honored wife of the, And I just felt there's a connection here between her passion, the passion that can be seen in this pas de deux. I love you, but I can't have you, but I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got to run away. I mustn't be seen with you, kind of thing, or you're getting too close to me. I don't want this. I'm not ready for this kind of intense relationship, whatever it is.
I love that you have sort of a character in mind when you approach.
I didn't when I danced it. I didn't see that, but I see it now.
You see it now.
I see it now.
And I learned just recently that this was one of your very first principal roles.
I did it when I was still in the Court of Ballet.
Yeah. So how did it evolve for you from then? How did you take it and learn something about where you were going to go to next? And then by the end of your time dancing Diamonds, where were you at? And then even staging it, how do you?
Oh,
that's a big
question.
It's like a little world into itself, right?
Yeah,
the exploration that you've had with this ballet.
Well, I think, first of all, Mr. Balanchine came and rehearsed me in it because I was so inexperienced. I wasn't really used to being partnered, especially this kind of partnering, the off-balance stuff. I didn't have that. And I wasn't used to being a dramatic presence. I was all about trying to just get the steps done and not fall.
Do you think he wanted you because he wanted to
He had to
put you in that world and see what you were gaining, what you would gain from it?
It was partly out of necessity, because all the ballerinas that normally would do it were injured. And Patty was busy, and Violette, everybody else was in rubies or emeralds, so he had to put somebody out there. And I guess, I don't know why he picked me, but he did. And I think he felt I was technically strong enough to do it. But I remember him saying, well, dear, can't you do something, like run away and step? He said, it's not just a run and a stop. But he left it to me, can you do something, dear? And they,
It's an exercise also for you to create your
come
own
up
identity.
with my own identity, my own interpretation. But of course there were a lot of technical things that he worked on too, and patterns, and a lot of things that we were talking about. And I think just as you become a more experienced dancer, first of all, then I stopped doing it when Suzanne came back, and I could see her, and I could watch her from a different point of view, because now I knew the steps, I knew what it was like, I knew what it felt like, I knew where the questions were in my mind about what is the step, or I saw what was different, and so then I tried to absorb that. And then by the time I really started doing it again, I was a much more experienced dancer.
And you were so different than her as an
totally
artist.
Totally different.
So to be able to see these different aspects in the same choreography has always fascinated me. To see very different ideas.
This was really on the, how on the bulletin board, there used to be this cork bulletin board, and where people wrote little things on.
It's still there.
It's still there, and Farrell isn't Merrill, and Merrill isn't Farrell.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. No,
and it's
that
true,
was part
but
of
we
the
were
beauty
doing the same role so often.
Yeah.
But we were, and we each had our own way of doing it. We were different.
Yeah.
But hopefully valid. Both of us were valid.
Yeah, and I think I would approach myself as trying to take some of both of you and pulling myself into it as well. It was my first classical principal role.
Really?
Yeah, I was a soloist, but I remember I didn't have imagery about it. I had done the core, but I kept finding moments in the music that I had no romantic experience in, really. And I felt it was pulling, these ideas about romance out of me as a young dancer that I hadn't experienced, and that came through the ballet. And I remember thinking at one moment in the back before she runs and does her hitch kick that I was Juliet. I was like, this is your moment to be Juliet. You're never going to be Juliet. And now, as a 22-year-old, you can do it right now. So I let myself think that.
Yeah.
And I loved being able to momentarily feel that fleeting idea of
freedom and
and then it was different. And then we did call those moments Swan Lake. And then
it's so related, the girl runs and the boy follows her and
but it shouldn't be verbatim thought of as that's what it is. It's just there's a like a sprinkling of an idea of it, but it's not what it is.
No.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
That it's not anything specific.
No.
But it reminds you. Even while you're dancing it, it's just a memory of Swan Lake, but it's not that.
But not at all.
Yeah. But I started to coach it now a little bit. Just once Suzanne left, I tried to instill what she said and help add those things. But I kept telling the two dancers that were doing it, who are extremely different, Maria Karowski and Sarah Mearns, I was trying to pull the strengths out of them and then instill where they have maybe lacking qualities. But I kept saying, there are also feathers in this costume, and there are also diamonds in this costume. So there's the quality of lightness and hardness. It's solid, but also this flight within it. So there's the balance of both things. I kept reminding them what their costumes were made of, and that the ballet has both of those qualities. So to pump up that strength or pump up the softening. Yeah, so I like that idea.
Or be more delicate every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I love the bow and arrow quality. Did he talk about that as that specifically?
That was catering to the way Suzanne danced. Mm-hmm. She was always kind of
always off balance.
Yeah,
and loved being off balance.
Yes,
and not afraid. I mean,
and somehow she. And then when he did Don Quixote, and he had that variation for
that
her.
third act
Unbelievable.
was unbelievable.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
and everything off balance. You can't imagine anybody.
More off balance.
Yeah. But he used to stand in the wings, Balanchine, right, stage right there, watching. And he used to say that I watch everything, all the quarter ballet girls, because some stand out, my eye keeps going to them. And they move differently, and I can't teach that, why my eye keeps going to that person. And that's how he spoke of you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And I always see her, and right, and yeah, and I remember one that's him being. I got early for a matinee, very early, and it's a warming up, and there was still the stage light, you know,
the single light.
Ronnie Bates had just come in, and Balanchine was already there, and it was like 10:30, 11, and it's a 2 o'clock matinee. And I remember seeing him, and he was standing looking so tired. And I went over and I said, Mr. B, why don't you skip a show? I mean, right? Or come late. And then he said, if you drive the car, you have to be behind the wheel. I want to come early to make sure that the car is running right.
Wow.
Anyway.
She did talk a lot about, she made a big point about, after that big promenade, the coming up, the hand, the bow and the arrow, that she was in a very big fourth, almost back, and he pulled her onto her leg.
Oh, that's interesting.
And that was tough for especially hyperextended Maria Kurowski, but that was, it almost felt like Agon when they go to the floor, and that kind of same idea.
When you danced, did you do images all the time?
Always. I always
too,
had images in my head.
Not always. I think the older I got, the more I had images, but not.
Yeah.
But some ballets I don't have many images for, but.
Yeah, I just let them evolve, or they pop into my head, and then they start to. It became a structure for me to play in the dance, and sometimes the image would take a different idea, but they would always kind of be the same. Oh, here comes that moment, and the music would ignite an image for me.
But it's so great that everybody can have a different idea.
Yeah.
I mean, we all respond differently to music, and we all, and movement too. This movement you like, this movement is uncomfortable, or this, there's something in the music that captures your fancy, and you want to express something, and we all have a different response.
Yeah.
I found diamonds one of the harder ones to understand. It took me a long time. I don't know why, but it did. But now, and partly I think when you go to teach a ballet, and you see it's not looking right, and then that's where I find I start telling stories that maybe I didn't necessarily tell to myself, because it just looks so flat. And if you give them an image, then sometimes it perks things up in the right way.
Yeah.
There's also something to me about they're so difficult. They're
always
so difficult, and there's something about putting that challenge in front of you that makes you become better than your normal self in a weird way. To rise to that challenge, to try and equal the glory of the music and the glory of the steps and the whole, be in the theater with all those people around you doing those,
When you stage and you go stage, don't you find it hard to get the dancers to be off balance?
Yes, it's terribly hard.
Because they're all,
and
all the
plie,
school.
you can't get them to plie.
Yeah.
They dance on
And
straight.
the partnering, that's a whole other technique for the men to understand
to use
how to use your
counterbalance
legs
and to allow her to be off balance.
And it's not about you looking pretty, it's really about how you're, and
Chase did very well.
he did great.
But beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, we were very lucky.
We were. Oh, were we
all
ever?
of us, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for passing it down to me and to these dancers over all these years, and for creating this amazing repertory for us with your ideas and your contribution to the choreography.
I don't know what you're talking about.